about this, but since it's so fresh on our minds, so I don't advise doing that. We're going to learn some techniques that'll be way less risky. So what you did was closer to gambling than investing. Just so you know, and I have evidence and data that would suggest that that's what you did was not much different than should I put my money on red or should I put my money on black? And but glad to hear you did. I've heard some other students make some money too. But one of the most dangerous things that can happen with situations like this is that you think you've got it figured out, and then not realizing that it was actually a gamble, and then you go ahead and take maybe 400, right? So you made about 800, 600. Did you put $200?
I put 300 in.
300 in. And you made 4 times?
Yeah, I made like
1,200 or so?
Like, well, from that money, like
you sold 1,200.
It was like 12. It was like 1,100.
So you made about $700, $800. Yeah. So then, you know, like, oh, well, that was fun, man. I like making money like that. And then you kind of go and say, well, I'm just going to put 400 of my profit back in and do it again. And then the worst thing that could happen is that you make more money on that bet. And then you're like, okay, well, this is easy enough. And then you keep kind of doubling down, essentially. So that's the problem with investing in some of the stuff. So most of you, how many freshman sophomore raise your hands? So next PGD, Justin Clark, the Courtney Institute philosophy professor, he's going to spend the first 20, 30 minutes talking about probabilities and kind of fallacies with decision making and kind of critical thinking. It should be a fun thing. And then Peter, the other economist, and I are going to talk about single stock investing and whether that's a good idea, Robinhood stuff. So this whole thing blowing up is so perfect for our talk coming up on this coming Wednesday. So stay tuned to that. But yes, so it was. I'm glad you made some money.
I'm not trying to make it a normal thing.
I know. I just want you.
There's going to be a huge amount of people that bought into it, so it had to raise. Well, there was a very good chance.
It turns out. Yeah, it turns out that you probably had a 50-50 shot and you won. So I guess, long story short. Samant, you have a question?
I did, but I forgot.
Okay. Yeah.
What is the interview assignment?
The interview assignment.
The interview.
Yeah, so I'll talk about that one at the break. I'll pull it up and stuff once we get done through this first video section. Anybody else? So I don't know if there's more questions on the Robinhood thing and whatever, or GameStop, but the same thing's going on with these other ones.
You said
What's that? Oh, that's for the PGD, for personal growth day.
right. So unless they were having that for the start. Right?
For the what?
It's about the start.
We're going to talk about it, yeah. Yep, that'll be part of the, it's going to be like an hour-long thing like the normal PGD. Yeah, I think that's what the PGDs are, yeah.
Okay.
Same thing you've been going to before, right? Are you, what year in school are you?
Oh.
What year in school are you? Sophomore, okay. So same thing that you guys have been attending. You guys had one last week, didn't you? Okay. So yeah, same thing, but we'll be the ones presenting. We're going to talk about the stock market. Yeah. All right, let's get this first video section. Oh, I was just going to say, any other thing on GameStop? It is, I guess, somewhat amazing. I'm kind of curious. So the stock market opened at 8:30 today, and I didn't check right away at the bell. So let's check together since it is relevant to this class. Heading down. Oh, but it's still at 300 right now. Okay, so here's today since the start of the bell. It opened at 377, dipped down to 291 and 310. So right now, the shorts are winning. Here's the, oh, here we go. And then yesterday, this weird, oh shoot, they don't have it anymore. I don't know if you can do yesterday's close, but there was this weird spike, and I counted off the ticker. So you can go down to the minute. This thing updates every minute. It went from 200 to 400 and back down to 200, which just doesn't happen, by the way. And no, I know most of you don't look at the stock market, but that just doesn't happen in a matter of 3 minutes. So the Reddit group, I'm guessing, and those people pushed it up. The stock volume went up. Oh, you know, I think more than doubled, or I didn't look at it exactly, but approximately doubled, and then crashed back down. So there's this weird needle spike at about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. That's what I was wondering, Kate, if you were going there, that you were in that somewhere, but you said you did the other one. So, all right, well, let's get on with today's section. So I had you guys do section number 3 on your own. Was your homework. So we're going to start with section 4. Okay, pull out a piece of paper. And I want you to list 7 baby steps. Julio, did you get my email on the Zoom stuff? Okay, you are expected to keep the camera on all the time when you attend via Zoom. Is there a reason you were shutting it off?
No, I didn't realize it was turning off, sorry.
Oh, okay, maybe, that's what I was wondering, if maybe it was just turning off. Okay. Okay, so looks like most of you got the 7 baby steps down. When do we buy a house in that baby step process? Where would the house, they talked about buying a house, I know most of the stuff, we're going to talk about mortgages and stuff later in the course, so this was kind of our first introduction to house-related stuff, but where in that baby step list do you think it would be appropriate to buy a house? Where are you at on that list? So between 3 and 4, right? So yeah, get your emergency fund. So sometimes on this radio show, they call it baby step 4A and 4B or something, that you can, you got that 3 to 6 months emergency fund, which is for all the whoopsies in life. And then you can start saving for down payment as kind of the, what they call kind of 4A, along with getting started with some investments. So we want to be really set financially, because houses come with bills, and houses add another level of potential use of an emergency fund, right? So if something happens to the roofs, the toilet goes out, the water heater's gone, whatever, stuff that you didn't have to worry about when you rented a place. So that emergency fund needs to be kind of established and thick, ready to tackle that stuff. All right, so I want to do discussion question number 1 here. And it says, kind of thinking about your transition out of college, what do you think will be your easiest transition out of college and the hardest? So go ahead and write that down. What do you think will be your easiest transition out of college? I know it's hard, even for freshmen, to think about. It seems like forever you're going to be in college for the next 3 to 4 years or whatever. But try to think about that. We want to visualize, kind of have longer term thinking is what this class is really about. Kind of forcing yourself, because we really tend to live in the moment, right? As young people, for sure. And some people aren't good at looking 1 week in advance, let alone 3 to 4 years. This transition.
Well, I'm using questions on my own in my rent. I think that will
Pretty easy, because you already had kind of practice doing it.
Yeah.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Josh. Hardest. Now I'm on hardest. Yeah.
I should be an actual
Not having that other kind of safety nets that are established, whether that be mom, dad, or other friends, or maybe the school administrator, whatever. You kind of have these established safety nets, right? And so First of all, what is a zero-based budget? So go ahead and write that down on your papers now. The zero-based budget that we did from the previous chapters here in chapter 2. What is a zero-based budget? Go ahead and just write. You don't even, well, you can explain it if you want, but I like to see an equation. You can put it in real simple terms. One, two, three, four, five, six. Michael, what's a zero-based budget?
Your planned income minus your planned spending equals 0.
Great. Planned income minus planned spending equals 0. So, if you do this, will it help you overcome the hardest things that you wrote down on your list?
No.
Will it help any of that? Let me go back to Josh a little bit. So you said being kind of out on your own, right? So what could happen out on your own that might not happen now?
Run out of money.
Run out of money. So I didn't see what your answer was specifically, but would this help that?
Oh, but those are different.
Yeah, right? So having a plan for your money can help with some of that. Taylor, what were you said no to the hardest thing. What was your hardest thing?
I said my hardest thing would be living alone because I'm scared of
Okay, all right.
specifically the dark. So
Would one of those fears be running out of money or not?
I think I'm really good.
Okay, good. So you got that one pretty well handled. So yours, the zero-based budget specifically, maybe doesn't quite
Yeah.
pertain
I'm
to
scared of like
fear of being alone and monsters and things in the bed and creaks in the night and that sort of thing. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that sounds good. Anybody else want to share their hardest thing? I think those are kind of fun to share. So part of the toolbox, might be able to help some things. If there was fears of certain things, the zero-based budget can really help kind of keep that anxiety. Would you agree though, Taylor, that even though you manage your money well, and I don't know if you were doing this before, doing zero-based budget or just what managing your money meant to you, but if you knock this anxiety out, would that maybe help you
Oh, yeah, for sure.
tackle
I
the
think that
monsters better?
not having financial worries always makes
Although
me
maybe the financial worries would help distract you from the monsters, so I don't know. Maybe it would be a healthy distraction. I don't think so, but I just, kind of thinking out loud here. So, all right, so that's kind of something that I think I want you guys to start to buy into, that this can really help. And of course, we don't have to wait till graduation. This is something that can help you right now as far as planning for your money, giving it a plan. Okay, so let me get to Taylor's question here on Sunday. So this is the calendar, and Sunday night we've got two things down. So one of them is the resume and cover letter. How many of you have a resume written already? Quite a few of you. And how about a cover letter? Less people have a cover letter. A couple of you do. So I want you to do both. And so you'll read the directions, update your resume if you haven't looked at it for a while, but that's part of what this section is about, and you can use, there's tools online to help build your resume, but the cover letter is often more important than the resume. So it's kind of your introduction to a particular company, and you're gonna make believe that you've got in fact, let me just do a little quick preview. You're going to pretend that you've got a company, here we go. Write a cover letter, find a position of interest to you, and prepare a cover letter to send to the employer. So you're gonna you can go look on Indeed.com for like one of you guys, whatever thing, psychology or otherwise, just find a job and then kind of write the cover letter back to them. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you're kind of writing the nature of what you're sending, and that can be an important feature. You might customize something about that company and say, you know, I know that you guys are dominant in the Kansas City market in counseling, and I'd like to be a part of that. You know, kind of crap like that. That's not stuff that you usually put in a resume, and that's why having this distinction between cover letter and resume is important. Okay, questions on that one? All right, then the other one is this interview. So I guess I have, I think I have this pulled up already. No, I don't. Okay, so here's the directions. So it says, working with a partner, go through a mock interview and then switch roles. Don't do this part when you work on this Sunday night. Monday, we're going to do an interview exercise here in class. So what's due Sunday night is simply looking at this stuff. It says to make a good impression. There's some interview tips. You can kind of read this, you know, be professional, don't slouch or chew gum, blah, blah, blah. But right here is what I want you to do Sunday night. These are popular interview questions that you could get during an interview. Tell me about yourself. What are your greatest strengths, weaknesses, some of your most significant accomplishments, interests or hobbies? Why do you want to work for this company? And then when we do our interview on Monday, some students are going to be throwing questions at you. We're going to do actually an interview, and we're going to do it a couple different ways. So I did this as an experiment just last term, or maybe it was a year ago, I can't remember. And students really liked having this experience. So kind of come prepared. And then you also want to be thinking here, at the end of an interview, it's usually, well, what sort of questions do you have for me? Right? And so now you're going to ask potentially something. You're not going to ask all of these, but these are just kind of give you a feel of the type of questions that might be good for you as the interviewee to throw back to the employer. All right, any questions there? Yes.
For like asking questions to the employer, would a good one be asking like what concerns do you find about my resume? Like asking about asking discussed?
That's an interesting one.
I've heard that told me a long time.
Yeah, it might be kind of a because it would give you if they're seeing some sort of deficiency, but they're not telling you about it, you know, because they're whatever not wanting to address it too hard. It would give you the opportunity to try to address it, whatever that thing was. And so then it could be a misunderstanding of what it meant or something. So yeah, I think that sounds like a good one to go back and forth. Hey, anybody else? So you're basically what you're submitting is answers to this. And all you're doing is kind of mentally preparing yourself. You're going to write it, submit it so that you guys have your answers. Tomorrow when we do or Monday when we do the interview, you won't have this in front of you. But it's just so that you've kind of gone through some of the questions that may be addressed. All right, does that answer your question, Taylor?
Yeah, so we answered those questions.
Yeah, for what's due Sunday night, it's basically just answer these questions. Okay. Yeah, and then read along with it. Okay, let's jump into the next section here. And so, you know, why would they want to pay you $20 an hour, $10 an hour, $7 an hour? It doesn't matter, right? In terms of the amount. So the answer to that question is simply on what are you going to do for them? And I think if you kind of have that mindset going in, it helps frame some of the interview as well. So I want you to write this down as an answer here, and then we can talk. So a company will hire me if the expected revenue, basically parentheses income. We won't get into kind of the accounting details of this. But a company will hire me if the expected revenue or income I generate is at least as much as they plan to pay me. We can talk about this in terms of a nonprofit organization as well, by the way. So they might be generating revenue or money through donations or other things, right? So it turns out a nonprofit actually functions very similarly to a for-profit organization. They have to be sustainable. You know, how are we going to pay our bills, pay the light bill, pay the operating costs of our nonprofit? So a company will hire me if the expected revenue or income I generate is at least as much as they plan to pay me. So they have a job in mind. Maybe they've been having Raven do that job for the last 3 months, and Raven's like, "Oh, I can't. I took on this job. You gave me it, but I can't do it anymore. The company's growing. The accounts are getting bigger. I think we need to hire another person to do this function so Raven can focus in on this function, right? Something like that would be kind of the normal growth of the economy, and so, or growth of the business. And so here, when they look at you paying you, let's say, $15 an hour, you need to be generating at least $15 an hour of expected income. Otherwise, you're not profitable, and it's not going to be sustainable, even if it was a nonprofit. So try not to be too confused by my for-profit, nonprofit thing, but you need to be worth at least $15 an hour. Otherwise, they're going to seek out alternatives. And so I sent you guys that minimum wage of $15. I don't know if you guys read it or not. I got lots of it, and it's kind of bonus material anyway. But the idea there is if you are currently being paid $10 an hour here in Ottawa to do a low, no-skill job, and now the federal minimum wage goes up to 15. If you would have been worth 15 already, they would have been paying you, and maybe once we start to trim back, we have 10 people making $10 an hour, and they're like, oh, okay, well, we probably can get this done with 7, especially if we buy that new machine that helps substitute this function of what normally was done by a person, right? And so there's shifts that are being made because each and every person on their own merit needs to be generating at least $15 an hour worth of revenue. And if not, there's going to be cutbacks and substitutions and the long, when the law is passed, maybe they say, well, we'll try this $15 an hour, or maybe they're stuck because they couldn't afford the machine to do the replacement, but eventually they will, right? And so it leads to people being unemployed. And so that type of legislation tends to hurt the poor the most, the low, no skill worker. You guys with your university degree are likely going to be making more than this anyway. So it's not really going to pertain to you, but it's more to the uneducated, low, no skill worker that's going to be impacted by it. All right, so if you kind of come in with that framework as you're doing your resume, and I've done this with one of my students who's graduating with economics, did a resume, he's trying to get an internship. And when he did it, he kind of talked up his sports. So he was a soccer player, and then some of the activities. And so when I sat down, he wanted me to look at his resume with him, and I said, you need to, put the things that pertain to the internship or to the business at the front part of it. So just reorganize. It's not that we don't want to talk about your soccer stuff, but just in terms of priority, what's the first thing that the hiring manager is eyeballing? They're going to, naturally, as we all do, you don't start at the bottom and work your way up. You start at the top and work your way down. So let's start to speak right away to this aspect with that job application. How are you going to be valuable to them? And it might be due to some of the things you've done, accomplishments you've had, your attitude, and that sort of thing. So, all right, questions or comments there? All right, so let's go to discussion question. Discussion question number 2. In the video, we had, I don't know if I can blow this up one more time. I tried to get it, seems like it starts to whack out here. I get too big. All right, so in the process of finding a job, the luck favors the prepared. Go ahead and write that down, quote unquote, luck favors the prepared. And give you a couple minutes to write that out. What does that mean? What does that mean? How could it make you stand out from the rest? So, on the number generator, was it the users? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Samad, what are you thinking for luck favors the prepared? Okay. So how do you think in this case, like you're going for a job interview, so you're finding a job, you found a job, and let's say you got an interview. Anything come out on how you could prepare for the interview? That would create.
Probably research.
Yeah.
So like when you're asking questions, you ask some questions about what you to
Yeah.
And I made a resume
Yeah. Yeah, and so some stuff might be able to kind of look lucky. Some of that stuff, hopefully, you did anyway. Is it okay to Facebook stalk the person who's interviewing you? Is that okay, or is that immoral or something? Do a little Facebook stalking, maybe Twitter stalking, or whatever you want to do. Social media stalking.
Yeah.
You think yes? How would that pertain to this statement? Luck favors the prepared. So now you've stalked in a friendly way. You've learned about some of the personal interactions, perhaps through Facebook or other social media, about the person who's interviewing you. How could that lead to this statement? What appears to be lucky maybe was because you were prepared. Right?
One thing is that you like know more things that they like as a person, and you can bring those up in discussion.
Good.
The other thing is you can learn more about their morals, and you can find out if you actually want to.
Could be that too, yeah. I think for this statement, it's more of the first thing. So you stalk them on social media and you find out that they go to Florida and they're into ocean fishing, right? And it turns out, I don't want you to lie during an interview, but for me, I've done some ocean fishing. So then somehow, you don't want to be too obvious about it, but through the course of your conversation, maybe it comes up that you've gone to Florida and done some ocean fishing. And they're like, oh, really? I do that too. We caught a huge mahi-mahi. They were really on the run last year. And all of a sudden, you start this little personal side thing that, as far as an interview goes, it looks like it was just a coincidence. But it was actually you who were prepared to kind of steer the conversation in a gentle way. That's what I mean by not being obvious, right? I looked on your Facebook and saw you like fishing or whatever. But through the conversation, maybe you can bring something like that up. And maybe you won't bring up every personal thing, but as you start to get good and practice communication skills, you can start to pick up on things on how you can steer things certain ways. And so there might have been, 3 or 4 personal items with the person you're interviewing, and fishing just happened to be the one that kind of came up naturally in conversation, right? So all of a sudden, what seems to be a lucky break that you guys had this personal connection was actually a result of you being prepared. So that's one way that you can kind of start to strengthen your opportunities and your potential for the job. All right, questions or comments there? Anybody else have anything they wanted to share in regard to the answers? Okay, we're going to do the case study next. So I think I'm just going to switch to this here. We got Tatum. So Julio, if you can't read it, I don't know how well it's coming across, but you can go to Tatum. Landon. I wanted to do Landon here and his roommate. You might be able to see that. So this gets back to our DISC profile. So just a little reminder, remember we did the DISC profile. What was the D? The dominant or lion or whatever, right? And I, influencing, S, stable, steady, and C?
It was analytic.
Kind of analytic and compliant is what the C was, but It just means that you like rules and following rules and that sort of thing. So all of those different traits. So here we go. We got Landon. Landon is having difficulty communicating with his roommate lately. It seems the two of them disagree on every decision, from what to watch on TV to what temperature to keep the apartment. Landon recently discovered that he displays a lot of dominant traits, while his roommate displays mostly compliant traits. The two guys like living with each other, and neither wants a different roommate. How can Landon change the way he communicates to find solutions with his roommate? So go ahead and do number 1 and 2. 1 and 2. So it's Landon talking to his roommate, and then number 2 is his roommate talking back to Landon. All right, now that you guys have a little time to noodle that, I want to give you a scenario, and you don't have to write this scenario down, but we got spring break coming up, which might be a little limited by COVID, but let's say these two roommates are planning to go to spring break. So Landon wants his roommate to go on spring break, and it's Landon's idea. How will Landon most likely, if he wasn't thinking about personality traits, how is Landon naturally going to pitch it to his roommate? What's his approach going to be? So we got spring break. What is Landon's approach going to be as a lion?
All the fun that they're gonna have, I guess.
Okay, yeah, all the fun that they're going to have, right? So it's going to be, hey, spring break, March 7th, let's do it. Is that about how Landon might say it? Dude, we're on. Let's just pack it up and we're gone. Now, his roommate is thinking what when Landon pitches it that way?
Where are we gonna sleep?
Where are we going to sleep? How many days are we going to be there? What are we going to eat in the morning? Are we going to pack anything as we go? Right? So that's going to be kind of the tension of like, I might not want to go. So now that Landon's had this class, how should Landon approach his roommate? What does he need to do about the spring break trip to try to best get the odds of his roommate wanting to come along? Figure out the details. And Landon hates doing details. And he doesn't think he should have to. But if he really wants his roommate to come, he should know that the way he is, he's going to want those details. So Landon might have to force himself to get on Expedia and actually check room rates to see if any are available. Hey, I found this place. We'll stay here for 3 days. And then my aunt has a house on the way. We're going to stay at her house, right? But Landon would normally not do that, but he's going to change his pitch because of this. Now, on the flip side, if you are the roommate who's got the idea to go on spring break and you're trying to get Landon to come along, how does the roommate approach Landon? His normal thing would be to put together a detailed list. I've got everything planned, Landon. This is where we're going to stay. This is what we're going to do. But does Landon want to hear that? No. So now the roommate, when he's trying to pitch Landon, needs to say, hey, dude, I'm thinking spring break next week. You in for it? That's all Landon needs, right? And in fact, if his roommate comes with, we're going to stay at my Aunt Betty's on Sunday, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and breakfast is going to be at this time. If he comes with a detailed plan, Landon might say, I'm out. That's too rigid for me, right, or whatever. So we start to kind of tailor our discussion now that we know, and we already showed in our classroom, that people really do fall into these areas. And you can start to change the nature of your communication with people depending on their style and personality trait. All right, that's a wrap.